The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 97. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and in today's episode, we are going to focus on psychology. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. The 6 to 7 Figure Show is brought to you by the High Ticket Program. What is standing between your six-figure practice and a seven-figure enterprise? Just 12 projects. That's all. You execute those projects and you're there. In the High Ticket Program's Accelerator, we guide you through every step of growth and scale, a process we call LEAP. Imagine having a world-class project team at your fingertips, guiding your team through every step of growth and scale. That is what we call pain-free growth, all with the goal of becoming a seven-figure enterprise and moving away from painful, time-consuming business operations and client delivery. Get a taste of LEAP in your own business by downloading our free high-ticket program core offer Black Book. Contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures for your business, including onboarding, customer service, graduation, financial management, and a lot more. You can get that by going to the show's homepage at 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free Black Book. I am absolutely pleased to introduce today's guest, Dr. Matthew Champagne. For 27 years, Dr. Matt has been a researcher, university professor, author, and serial entrepreneur. He was named Technology Visionary by Survey magazine for pioneering never-before-seen customer feedback solutions. When not ranting about how crappy surveys ruin your business, Matt's usually cruising with his family or playing on stage with his classic rock band. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Frank. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming with the Purdue colors for us Boilermakers to.
Hey, and I got one more surprise for you for your YouTube listeners. I have my Gene Katie autographed Purdue Boilermaker basketball here too.
That's awesome. All right. We are, I'm dressed in the wrong colors for this interview. Those of you who are listening on audio are just missing out on all this fun stuff. Sorry about that. Come on over to the video. Cool. So I wanted to dig into the survey thing because this has been something that's been bugging me for a long time. So, but without giving any of my own feelings about this, I just want to hear your thoughts. So, crappy surveys ruining businesses. How's that happening and what's going on?
It's everywhere. I mean, I've been in this almost 30 years. I've reviewed and critiqued about 8,000 surveys over that time and analyzed about 96 million data points from those surveys. So there's some solid research in it. And you as a mathematician and an engineer could appreciate that surveys have a lot of math in them. But nobody knows that because they're not trained. Only the people, the nerdy survey people know the psychometrics behind surveys. You can't just ask a question and then put a response scale. A response scale is like strongly disagree to strongly agree. You can't just match those up and expect it to work any more than you could just put some numbers on a page and expect an answer to appear. I mean, with a mathematical problem, there's only one way to solve it and every other way is wrong. Yeah. And that's true with surveys. There's only one way to ask the question. There's only one way to show it to your customers, your members, your clients, your students. Every other way is wrong. And it's just something that's just not known and appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the common things that people are doing with surveys right now that are just, that are soliciting essentially misleading information?
Oh gosh, that's I wrote a book.
Pick the top three, yeah.
Well, I wrote a book in 2014 listing the top 25. So it's called the Survey Playbook. It's the top 25, but it hasn't changed. Those are the 25 worst techniques used over the past 20 some years, and it hasn't gotten any better. And I guess that's the frustration. Just a few of those. We all know we get a survey in our inbox or we get it after an event. But it's always after, right? When do they ask us for feedback? When the conference is over, when the course is over, when the vacation's over, they ask, how was it? Who cares? I'm done. Like, how would this help me? You're saying, oh, hey, Frank, why don't you take your most precious commodity, your life, take your time, give it to me to help me improve our products and services because they might help somebody in the future. They're not going to help you. You're done. That is a huge problem. Why aren't we asking our customers, our members, our students, while it matters at the event, in the course, while it's ongoing, why do we do what we call the autopsy approach? Wait till it's over and then figure out what went wrong.
Yeah, that is so true. I've railed against this myself for a long time. I've called it oversurveying because, after every phone call with a bank or a telecom provider, they're asking you to essentially give feedback on the call. And it's like, why am I doing this? I'm getting, if I get one more survey from Amazon that asks how the packaging was, like just little tiny stupid stuff that doesn't seem to matter. And while it feels annoying, what a lot of people don't understand is that there's a mathematical problem with that. And I know you know this, and it's just, if you ask for something that is going to get an uneven response, because a lot of people are just going to ignore it and blow it off, all you're doing is you're collecting extreme data. You're going to get the very worst of the worst and the very best of the best, and everything in the middle disappears. And you might think that that's a problem or not a problem, but it is, because actually the only way to truly understand the data is to get the full spectrum. If you carve out the unwashed middle, as lots of people like to say, you're actually missing all of the information, and you could really make bad decisions by overreacting or underreacting to what's going on because you just don't have a good sample of responses.
And that's been empirically demonstrated. I've done it myself, where we asked people, we actually did a study where we asked them questions on a survey. Those that didn't respond, we actually followed up and said, hey, how come you didn't respond to the survey? And it was really hilarious because then they responded, and we found that their answers quite different, as you would imagine. Yeah. And this is so harmful in every industry, especially we all know about the net promoter score. That is, would you recommend us to your friends? And it's on a 1 to 10 or a 0 to 10 scale. That is so damaging because you have to put a 9 or a 10. If you gave anybody a 7 or an 8, you have penalized that. You have hurt them. You have taken money away from them. You have ruined their promotions, their bonuses, because we're totally misusing the scale.
Right.
So there's other problems like that that are just inherent.
I'm so glad you mentioned NPS. I hate NPS. Like, it's out there. It's so ubiquitous. It drives me nuts. And I'm like, just mathematically, this is so flawed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Somebody.
Well, and the net
talk about this for hours after this interview is over. I'm so.
Well, I will say that the net
everywhere. Everyone uses NPS. It's crazy.
And if you ask the net promoter score people, they know it. They know it. They know it's flawed. And they say, well, there's this workaround, or you do. It's like, well, we don't know what the workarounds are. You don't tell that to anybody.
Right.
So,
well, not only that, but they don't care. They're selling their NPS stuff at this point. I learned a long time ago that the mathematical purity of the measurement doesn't matter if someone's getting rich off of it. Back in the credit crisis, I'll just get like a side on my was something I did back in the credit crisis. We were working on statistical analysis of mortgage behavior. That's what everyone wanted to know at the time. What happens when someone doesn't pay their mortgage anymore? What's the best way to handle it? Do you foreclose? Do you give a modification? Do you drop the price? Like, what do you do that's going to benefit both parties, right? It's going to be mutually beneficial for everybody. And so we did a lot of statistical analysis on it, and we found that the right answer was actually completely opposite to what the federal government of the United States was pushing as the solution, which was a lot easier, but it was wrong. So I actually traveled to Washington, D.C., and I sat down with the guys at Fannie and Freddie, and I showed them the data, I showed them the analysis, and I said, you guys are doing this wrong. You're using the wrong metrics here. And they go, we know. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, but this is the best we can do. And we had to get 8 government agencies to all agree on something. And they didn't care. They had the data. They knew it was wrong. They didn't care. It drove me nuts. But
now they can do that. So that's my point with entrepreneurs and folks trying to go from 6 figures to 7 is the big companies can lose tons of money. They can churn and burn. They can afford it, but the 6-figure folks can't. You actually need to be able to accurately know what's in your people's head, what they're thinking, what they need, what they want, what they expect. You have to accurately measure that and collect it repeatedly so that you can keep those people focused on you, that you keep delivering them. So we can't use these error-prone surveys like the big companies can.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I know that one of the things that you're involved in helping businesses with is leveraging the psychology of understanding how the audience is operating in order to improve the performance of webinars. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. besides the math, there's a lot of psychology in there, as you can imagine. I actually have 9 principles that I've developed and refined over the many, many years, and applying this to many organizations. So that if you apply these 9 psychological principles, you're assured of 3 things. One, that you have accurate results, they're interpretable. Second, that you're going to get a huge response rate. In my world, when I put a survey out, if I don't get 80% to fill it out, to me, that's a failure. Yeah. And you show that to people and they're like, oh no, we all know if you get 5 or 6 or 10, that's really great. No, if you're doing it wrong, sure. 80%, I want to hear from everybody. So you get high response rates. And third, you get people focused on you forever. That's the name of my podcast. That's my motto, keep your customers forever. I have people fill out my surveys. In one training we did, we had people fill out the same survey 21 days in a row. The response rate at the end of the 21 days was the same as the beginning, 96%. 96% of people kept filling it out. And you're like, well, that's nuts. Don't people get survey fatigue? Not if you apply the psychology. The psychology that's key here, and there's many of these principles, but one is sharing the results with them. They took their time to fill it out. Then we came back, shared the results, and they said, wow, my voice was heard. What I said made a difference. I'm going to fill it out a second time. And that's the power behind the principles.
Yeah, that's really important. It's one of those principles that, you know, I've used in the corporate consulting world when we had to get, you know, executives from Fortune 500 companies to respond to stuff. If you want the CEO of a Fortune 500 company to give you information, you better darn well answer the what's in it for me question, because otherwise they are not going to give you a time of day. And one of those really critical things that we were able to do is to create essentially the sharing of that information back with them. And that turned it from a, you know, it's all about me exercise into, no, we're actually trying to help improve your organization as well. That's a great idea.
Well, I'm going to steal that line, treat your customer like a CEO, because that's what it's all, I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's what we do to get that kind of response rate. Nobody, you know, few people do that. They just send you out a survey. Hey, take your time to fill this out to help us. And they treat us so it's almost like expected. Hey, you ate at my restaurant. You ate my bagel. You know, you flew on our plane. You owe us to fill out this survey. And I just hate that attitude. Like, I don't owe you anything. I already paid you for the service. I don't also owe you to tell you what you did right or wrong. You owe me something for my time. And what it is not money. I don't want your dumb lottery. I don't want to be in some drawing to win some electronic device I already own. I want to know that what I said was heard, and that you applied it and you explain this to others. I want my voice heard. And that's what, if you give that to people, they will reply to every survey and answer every question you ever send.
Yeah, that's great. And the other thing, and I don't want to turn this into a survey rant because we could do this for hours, but the other thing is that large organizations that do those kinds of surveys, their front line is gaming the system so badly. You know, I mean, every one of us has been in a position where we've had that awkward moment with the frontline customer service person. They're like, you're going to get a survey in a couple of days. And if you don't mind taking the time to like, give me a 10, you know, it's this really awkward conversation where you're like, okay, like, what am I supposed to say to that? And then you realize that it's totally messing up exactly what the organization was trying to do in the first place. It's just crazy.
Yeah. But I feel for them. Those are my people, because I've talked face-to-face with bank tellers and customer reps who didn't get promoted, who got financially hurt because they put an 8 when, you know, they're like, oh, you're supposed to give me a 9 or a 10, or don't you know on a 5-point scale, I got to get a 5.
Right.
It's the damage this is doing, not only to your customers, but to your own people. They can't even be measured.
Yeah. I remember doing follow-up on a survey one time, and we were actually sort of doing a focus group testing with the folks who had filled out the survey. And so we asked a guy, you know, well, you didn't give a 10 here. Why didn't you? And he goes, I never give 10s.
Bingo.
It was like that college professor was like, I never give A's, you know?
Right. Yep. Yeah. And we did that studies like that. And I actually have the percentages, you know, of any stat nerds are all about what percentage of people don't choose the highest rating, what people choose like in the middle, but they're actually saying this is really great. So people that's one of the problems, and I mentioned that in the Survey Playbook, is people interpret that scale differently. Rule number 1 in psychology, people are different. Yes. So you set up a scale and say, oh, well, we all know that if you give a 9 or a 10, you mean this. No, they don't. Everybody is looking at that scale completely different. And then you take what you think they're trying to tell you and then you turn that into result. That it's just part of the huge problem. If you set the scales up right, if you ask the right questions in the right way, you'll know what they're saying. You don't have to play this guessing game and act on misinformation, which describes most everybody out there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I mean, because if we had an hour, we'd dig into this more. Hopefully everyone who's listening is now going to go get that book. I'm going to go buy it and read it like tonight because I love this stuff. I geek out on this stuff. But I want to turn our attention a little bit to the work you're doing with your clients. So walk us through your business. Like what products and services do you offer? Who are you working with right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my first job was I was a professor at a university. And at that time, the problem that we saw was with decisions being made and the use of surveys in universities. They're called course evaluation forms. So I ended up leaving the university and starting a company. We're the first company to create a web-based, on this new thing called the World Wide Web, course evaluation system. And I was told by my university, like, this will never fly, faculty will never allow students to, do evaluations online and such. But we did it. And now today, about 85% of universities and colleges use our methodology for asking their students. So that was my higher ed play there early on. I sold that company, and now I've been focused on entrepreneurs for the most part, because I see them as the ones needing the most help. As I said, they don't have the money to throw away in the churn and burn. And I'm trying to get them to keep their customers forever. Ask the right questions in the right way at the right time, and then close the loop. That is, share those results with your people. Just, you don't have to share all the results, but I teach them how to share a certain amount of results that triggers in them that, wow, my voice is being heard. This person is different. This is somebody who actually wants to hear from me. And then I show them, here's another question. So I call it the survey conversation. You ask a question and they respond, and then you share some results, which gives you some right to ask another question. Yeah. And you see your response rate goes up and up and up. And people see that data and they think I'm lying, like, oh, we all know survey, it goes down over time. Like, no, actually, time and time again, your response from your audience will go up and up and up. So we've done this for webinars, as you mentioned, just even for email messaging. We just did an event where after the event, you all we go to a conference, and then after the event, it's kind of like crickets, but I tell those event planners, keep talking to your people, keep asking questions. And so we did that in this event we just did this summer. The open rates and click rates of emails went from 33%, the first email out, to 78%. After 7 weeks of sending email, asking questions, getting response, 78%, we're opening the email. And that's what happens. You get people's attention. They feel like they're contributing to your business. They want to make you better. It's just a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, what a powerful psychological principle of that. I mean, in some sense, it's kind of generically, at least what I like to tell people, which is every interaction with the customer needs to be aligned with, what's in it for them. You have to be thinking about the value proposition. It shouldn't, you can't structure sort of a marketing funnel as a psychological trick. Like, you really have to honestly be trying to deliver value and doing something beneficial. But it's fascinating to see that if you actually execute that you see it show up in response rates, because you're right. Everyone expects that the continual engagement just, continues to kill off response over time. And it just shows, well, maybe you're doing it wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Just flip it on its head. And, it kind of dovetails with this authenticity movement, that you're actually showing that you care about your members and your students and your clients, because we're all tired of, what I've been in this digital marketing space maybe 6 years. And I mean, the number of courses I've bought and programs and conferences, I can count on one finger the number of those people that actually sent me a personal email, because we're all in these generated email platforms, and they're like, oh, your feedback's really important to us. I'm like, no, I know it's not, because you don't even know who I am. And no matter what I write, I'm not going to hear back from you. And that's just time and time again. So if you can use some psychology, It doesn't take long. It's not like a time-intensive process. It's just a matter of closing the loop, asking the right questions in the right way when it matters to them. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, that's true. And, we have definitely as a society been burned out by inauthentic expressions of concern. I know that I personally probably need to find a 12-step group for this, but I scream at the phone every single time I hear a recording that your call is important to us, even though I'm sitting here waiting on hold. I'm sure it's a problem. I know I need to work on it, but but it's crazy. It's crazy. So walk us through kind of how you're working with entrepreneurs right now. What are some of the ways that entrepreneurs are engaging with you to improve in this area?
I guess there's basically 3 tracks of it. There's those that are the survey, my survey people. They work in training companies, in Fortune 500 companies. They work in smaller entrepreneurial shops, but they actually want to know the nitty gritty of how to ask these questions. So we do some training on just that. I do some video tutorials. I call them my seasons. It's called the Keep Your Customers Forever seasons. I think we're starting season 6 coming up. But it's question and answer. And then I actually review and critique their surveys. So they'll submit their stuff. And as I said, I've done this about 8,000 times now. It's a lot of fun because people will, they work up their courage and they'll say, here's the survey I put together. But nobody ever tells me, I've never heard anybody ever hand me their survey and say, we are so proud of this survey. Here's our survey. Everyone says, oh, we're kind of working on this. We know it's not quite right. And I take it and make it better. So there's the survey track. There's the Keep Your Customers Forever track. Those people that just want to use good, authentic sales techniques. So I teach them the good psychology. I teach them all about the dark psychology that we use now. And we can all name them, right? Authority, scarcity, reciprocity. And I say, you don't need to hammer people with the dark psychology. There's actually some really good psychology that works even better. And they don't know it. They just never seen it because the digital marketers say, this is all there is. And they just don't know about it.
Well, and frankly, and not to interrupt, but this is the thing that just frustrates me, because you and I have a similar background where we come out of an academic and corporate world and relatively new to the digital marketing space. I may be doing this only about 7 years, but you're about the same time frame. That all these folks who are talking about psychology have probably never taken a psychology class in their life. They've read some blogs and maybe they've pulled some quotes from someplace, but it's this sort of incestual pool of ideas that, with it's kind of like the telephone game. Every time it gets passed from one marketer to the next, it gets like worse and worse and worse. And I'm in masterminds and other groups where I see people like sharing their best practices for sales. And my eyes roll and my stomach turns. I'm like, this is so manipulative and just awful. And I know there are folks in the entrepreneur community who completely disagree with me on this, but I tell people, listen, you really have to think about that small business owner, that entrepreneur, like they were a Fortune 500 CEO. That's really what I teach people is like, would you ever walk into the CEO of Apple's office and tell them that they've got an hour to make a decision to hire you, otherwise the price goes up by a factor of 2? Like, no one would ever do. They get thrown out on your ear. But yet for some reason, because these are small potato fries, we think it's okay. Anyway, again, personal rant there. I love that you're talking about the good side of psychology. And you're right. It is far more powerful than the manipulative stuff. If people just understood the principles and could leverage them.
Yeah, I think I'll put this in the show notes, a YouTube video on this, because I rant about the dark psychology, but people should know that everything that you hear about scarcity and urgency comes from a single book, Robert Cialdini's book.
That's right.
There is an entire library. There are almost 100 years of research in psychology. The digital marketers about 10 years ago plucked that one book off the shelf and they said, here it is. If you look at the table of contents of that one book, there it is. Social proof, authority. Everything that you are taught in digital marketing comes from the table of contents from a single book. And that book, what I teach people, is a combination of research from post-World War II. The darkest, evilest, we did studies of conformity and manipulation and we put obedience studies. We put people under these heinous studies that we, as psychologists, we can't even perform these studies anymore.
Yeah, right.
He took those studies and said, wow, those work great. I'm going to give names to those: scarcity, urgency. So when it feels icky using their techniques, there's a really good reason. It comes from the deepest, darkest bowels of psychological research. Why are we using that? Well, it's effective. That's what they would say. But I would say it's a seasoning, just a little bit of urgency, a little bit of scarcity. But there's so much more good psychology that will draw people to you and keep them with you forever.
Yeah. Well, and look, anyone who's been paying attention knows that some of these things are burning out. People are burning out on these tactics. And, I guess there's some marketers who feel like, the pond is big enough. We'll go find other folks who aren't burned out on it yet. But I just think the day is coming when some of this stuff, people will become attuned to it and realize it's not effective anymore.
Yeah, our people are far too savvy.
Yeah.
And we're just burnt out because it's punishing these techniques that they use. Great for the digital marketers who were there at the gold rush. Anything would have worked at the beginning. I mean, you could do anything. And so then they teach that to the next generation, right, who teaches it to the next generation. It's over, folks. Like that, and it's been over for a while and just nobody will admit it. But we're all savvy. We all know what's coming. We know the sales pitch. We know exactly what they're going to say, but they don't have anything else. That's the problem. They don't know anything else. And that's what I'm here to teach folks is you have decades of research. You have plenty of resources to use, and you could be so much more effective without being that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Everyone should check this out. I really think that, that we've made a left turn at Albuquerque instead of, doing the right thing. Those of us who are old enough get that joke, but, this is like really an area where we need to fix. Our industry needs to fix itself. I love that you're working in this space. Look, Matt, I wish we had more time because we'd talk for hours and about this, but unfortunately we're out of time, and you've been really gracious with your time today. So one last question before we go. If people want to learn more, they want to dig into this more with you, find out more about the work you're doing, what's a great place for them to start?
Well, I guess two places. One, I mentioned YouTube. You could just go to YouTube/Matthew Champagne. I'm just a lot of tutorials and trainings and things. Subscribe there. But I also put up on my site, MatthewChampagne.com. I'll put up an infographic of the 9 principles. I think that'd be helpful since I've kind of talked about them in passing. If you actually look at what the 9 principles are about the timing and the frequency and all that, I think that'd be really helpful first step. So I'll put that at MatthewChampagne.com/6 to 7 for your show. The number 6, the letters TO, and the number 7, 6 to 7, MatthewChampagne.com, 6 to 7.
Great. Thank you. That's really generous. And those links are in the show notes or under the video if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're out and about listening, come on back to the show notes and click on through to connect with Matt. I really encourage you to take a look at this stuff. It's really important. I think for most people, there's going to be a huge quantum leap in performance if you can master these principles. Matt, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. And thank you for being with us on the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I've been your host, Frank Bria. And just a quick reminder about the high ticket program Core Offer Black Book. Contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures on how to run your coaching, consulting, or expert-based service business. You can download that for free at the show's homepage, 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free Black Book. All right, we'll see you on the next episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Make it happen. Bye-bye.